Welcome to Leaving Academia, Becoming a Freelance Editor. I'm your host, Paulina Cossette, and today we are going to talk about what you should do when you get your first inquiry from a potential client. So, first, you got the inquiry. Somebody contacted you. Congratulations. This is the moment that changes everything because it shows you that the first steps you've taken in your marketing are working and that there is someone out there who is interested in paying you to help them solve their problem. And I'm certain that if there's one person out there, there are many more. So, this is the first big win that you can experience in your business. But you might be wondering, okay, what exactly do I do next? The excitement is there, and then it starts to move into panic. Well, don't panic. I'm going to help you out today. I'm going to walk you through all the basic steps. And most of all, I want to reassure you that you can do this. You know how to do this. It's obvious, it's common sense. And I'm just going to give you those steps to help you out so you see that there's really no trick or magic to it. You just have to develop your own style and you'll get there. You'll get more confident over time. Welcome to Leaving Academia, Becoming a Freelance Editor, the podcast. I'm your host, Paulina Cossette. In 2019, I was a political science professor who was fed up with the stress and hostility of academia, not to mention the low pay. I left my tenure-track job and went from barely surviving to thriving as a freelance academic editor. Today, I own Acadia Editing Services, an editing and coaching business that brings in 6 figures a year. In this podcast, I'll discuss the challenges of academia, what academic editing involves, and what life as a freelancer looks like. If you're willing to jump outside your comfort zone, it is possible to find joy, true flexibility, and a profitable and rewarding career as an academic editor. Thanks for listening. Let's start with step 1. First, when someone contacts you, you want to confirm the details of their project. It's very important in this early stage that you listen to the client. Now, especially if you are an editor, a lot of these conversations will probably be held over email. Some clients do want to chat over the phone or on Zoom, and so I think it's nice if you offer that option. Some of them do want to see you face to face to see that you're real and get a sense of who you are, but not everyone does. Either way, you want to sort of read between the lines in what they're telling you. So when they write to you, a lot of people, especially those who have never worked with an editor before, or even those, if you're a coach, maybe you're a dissertation coach or a writing coach or something, and this person has probably never worked with a coach before, they're going to tell you in their own words what it is that they think they need. But it is your job as the professional to try to read between the lines and decipher what it is they really need and what the language is that we use. So, for example, a lot of people will write and say, I need somebody to proofread my paper. Now, in the business of editing, a proofread is the very final pass that we take on a document, usually after it's been typeset as a PDF. So, for example, if you're proofreading a book, the book has already gone through at least one copy edit, probably more. It's been typeset into the way that it's going to look in the proofs when it's printed. And the proofread is someone who goes through and looks over the PDF to make sure that there are no last minute typos, to make sure the images are all showing up correctly and those kinds of things. But when someone contacts you and says, they have this paper or a dissertation that they need you to proofread, they're not asking for a proofread. They're asking for a copy edit. Now, we don't need to explain that to them. We don't need to tell them, oh, no, you're wrong about this. That's not the right tactic to take. But you do need to have in the back of your mind what it is they're actually asking for. So when you get that email or that direct message or whatever, you want to get the information that you need from them. And so you need to be very clear about asking them what information, but be clear in telling them what information you need them to provide. So, if you're editing, you would want to ask them to send you a draft of the file. You can tell them it's okay if it's unfinished. I just need to see a draft to get a sense of the project. You need to, at the very least, get a word count, right? If for some reason they don't want to send you a draft, you need to ask them for the word count. Sometimes they'll tell you the page count, but that's obviously not helpful because page count depends on formatting. So it's the word count that we want to get. You need to ask them for any submission requirements. If they're trying to publish in a journal or a book, you need to know what the formatting requirements are. You need to know if there's a required style guide, whether it's APA or Chicago or MLA or whatever. You need to know what the deadline is. And even more specifically than that, you need to know their timeline for having you work on the project. So not just what is their deadline, when do they have to say return the document to the journal to submit, but when are they going to be able to send the file to you for editing, and when do they need you to return it to them so that they have enough time to wrap up the details before their actual deadline. So I always phrase this as timeline rather than deadline. And then finally, you want to make sure that you ask them about any other details that could affect the work that you would be doing. So, for example, if it's a graduate student, maybe there are some requirements that their dissertation chair or their PI has that they need to keep in mind, but they may not think to relay to you. Maybe if you're a dissertation coach, you need to find out if they're even allowed to hire a dissertation coach. You might just want to confirm that with them. So, all of those kinds of things are details that give you a better sense of the big picture of this project. Obviously, you want to know this information because you need to know if the project is a good fit for you. Are you going to be able to deliver and provide the services that the client needs? And is it something that you even want to work on? Even if it's your first inquiry, if this is a project that you think is going to be very time consuming, if you get the sense that the client is going to be very difficult to work with, don't just accept it because it's your first project and you're eager to get a job. Make sure that it's something that you actually can deliver on and that you're going to enjoy doing, because you don't want to get in the habit of taking on work that you don't like or that is going to end up being more trouble than it's worth. So get a sense of the full project and the client's needs. Next, I would suggest that if you are intuitive, you can also try to read between the lines of what the client is telling you in the sense of how much help they need with this project. What is their style of working with you as an editor or a coach? Are they, like I said, are they going to be difficult? Are they very nervous or very anxious? Have they ever worked with an editor or coach before? Are they clear on what exactly it is they want out of this process? If you are in some kind of coaching relationship, are they going to be willing to put in the work to make these changes? All of these kinds of things are topics that you wouldn't want to outright ask the person, hey, are you difficult to work with? No, don't do that. But in your emails, in your Zoom conversation with them, you want to get a sense of their learning style, their personality style, other characteristics like that that can help you figure out what this experience is going to be like for you and how you can best deliver the outcomes to them or deliver the product to them. What do I mean by that? So, as I said earlier, there are some people who prefer to communicate via email. There are some people who prefer to talk on Zoom. There are some people who are in a hurry and they just want you to fix the paper and send it to them and they'll wrap it up and submit. There are others who need more hand holding, right? They need you to leave comments explaining the changes that you make to the text. They need you to be more nurturing, a bit more of like a helicopter coach, if you will. They want a lot of feedback and a lot of reassurance. So if you are intuitive, if you are empathic and you can get a sense of this person's personality style, these are some extra things that you might consider, because the way that you respond to this person, if you can mirror them and show them that you can meet their needs, not just in terms of the product that you're returning to them, but in the style of how you are delivering this service, that can be really helpful as well. So, finally, in this first step, you want to make sure that you have all the information that we've just discussed. You want to make sure that they have sent you a draft of the file, if they have it, the style guide, information on how to format the references list, any other special instructions, and the timeline. And then tell them, thank you for sending these files. I will look them over and reply with a quote. Okay. Step 2, draft and deliver the quote. As you sit down to assess the materials and all the information that they've sent you, you want to use your best judgment here to determine what you'll charge. Now, when you've been editing or coaching for a while, you're going to have set prices. You know, if you're copy editing, you're going to know I charge 6, 7, 8 cents a word, whatever it is. If you're a coach, you're going to have your packages and their pricing for people to choose from. That's already laid out. If you're a developmental editor, maybe you have an hourly rate or a per word rate. And you're already going to have this information. But when you're just starting out, you want to really just take your best guess, right? This isn't the end of the world if you underprice or overprice. Don't have a panic attack about it. Just think through it and make your best guess. If you are copy editing a dissertation or even a journal article or something like that, I would suggest that you start around 3 to 4 cents per word US. And that includes the copy edit itself and any required formatting of the document. And this also includes references. Some people will separate out the references list and charge, $2 per reference or whatever they do. I don't do that. I like to keep things simple for myself and the client. I just charge a per word rate for any text in the document that they want edited. Maybe they don't want you to edit the references list. You would just leave that out and charge per word for the rest of the text. For developmental editing in the beginning, usually it is easier to charge a per hour rate. Maybe this is $50 to $60 an hour to start, depending on the amount of experience you have with doing a developmental edit of a book. It's up to you. And in that, I would also try to give the client an estimate of what you think the total cost will be. So you can say, I charge $50 an hour for developmental editing, and I expect it will take me 10 to 15 hours. Maybe you set a maximum and say, if it looks like it's going to go over this amount, then I'll let you know and we can reevaluate. For coaching, you could have a single session where you charge at least $100 an hour for that session on Zoom. Or you might have a package. So maybe somebody is finishing up their dissertation and they need help in their last semester to tighten everything up and make sure it gets done. Maybe you meet with them once every 2 weeks during the semester. So maybe that's 8 sessions over the course of the semester for an hour each time. You might charge $100 for each session. And so that could be $800. Or something you might think about is to actually charge a little more for the entire package. So you could say, to work with me for a semester, the cost is $1,000. And that gives you a little bit extra wiggle room to consider the amount of time that you're going to spend emailing with them, answering questions, and those kinds of things. This is something that I recommend because in the long term, we want to get away from charging an hourly rate. even for coaching. We want to get away from people doing the mental math, thinking about, well, she's making $100 an hour or $200 an hour or whatever it is. You don't want them to do that mental math. You want them to think about the total pricing that you're charging for the package and your time together and the value that you're providing in all of those sessions over the course of the semester. What is it worth to the client to work with you for 16 weeks and have a finished dissertation that looks great, that's even better to potentially turn into a book, and they've done it all with less stress? Is that worth $1,000? I would think so. So that's the kind of math that we want them doing is I'm paying $1,000 for this final outcome. Of course, the caveat here is you do need to think about any additional time that you're spending outside of your Zoom sessions. So if you are also doing a developmental edit of a dissertation and reading chapters and giving feedback on those, in addition to the Zoom coaching, you need to make sure you're charging for that as well. And so you can include that as an add-on to your Zoom sessions, or you can come up with a price for the package as a whole. Maybe it's $2,000, and that includes one round of feedback for each chapter or something like that, right? So this does take a little thinking. It does take some consideration and some math on your part about how long do you think it's going to take you to complete the work and to deliver the final product, whatever it is, to the client. But ultimately, you want to either break it down per word for copy editing or as a total price or a total package price for even a developmental edit or coaching. I also want to emphasize here that when you are delivering the quote, you don't want to just give them the quote itself, the dollar amount or the whatever currency you're in, the total cost. You want to explain very clearly how the quote breaks down and what it includes. So, for example, when I am giving someone a quote for a copy edit, I don't just say I'm going to copy edit your paper and it's going to be 8 cents a word. I tell them exactly what that means. What is a copy edit? It includes editing, checking for grammar errors and typos. It includes editing for clarity and flow. It includes applying the submission guidelines and the formatting requirements. It includes editing the references list. It includes cutting text if they've asked you to shorten the document, right? All of the stuff that are these details that you are putting in time and effort. You want to make sure that they understand what they're getting when they're paying you 8 cents a word to edit their paper. The same thing with the developmental edit. Explain what you're doing to the text, what they can expect to see when you return the manuscript to them. Are you going to include some kind of editorial letter or document that summarizes the changes you've made and any recommendations? The same thing with coaching. Are they going to get recordings of the Zoom sessions or transcripts? Are you including edits to the documents? And if so, how many passes are you going to do? How many times are you going to review those documents or maybe those dissertation chapters? Are you going to read each one once, or are you willing to let them make additional changes and then you read through it again? You want to be very clear here because you don't want to get in a situation where they thought you were going to read their chapter 3 10 times and you only plan to read it once. So make sure you're very clear in explaining all of the value that they are getting when they pay you this amount of money. And, think of it as when you go to a sales car lot, if you're going to buy a car, you see the sticker price, right, on the window of the car. And probably most of the time you assume that's negotiable. But what really sells it for you is when the salesperson invites you to come sit in the vehicle. They turn on the engine. They turn on the heated seats. They turn on the radio. They ask you to take it for a test drive, right? This is all done to make sure that you understand the value of what it is that you're getting. So you don't just look at that price tag and get sticker shock and go, oh, no, no, I can't have this. I can't afford this, right? So think of it as making sure that they see the inside of the car and that they know exactly what it is that they're getting as you also deliver that quote and that price for them to consider. One final point here on the quote and the pricing is I know that this is, again, your first job, your first potential client, but I don't want you to ever price out of fear. You are an expert. You have tremendous knowledge and skills. This person has reached out to you because they don't know what they're doing. They feel like they can't do it alone. They can't accomplish whatever it is they need to do by themselves. And they're reaching out to you for help. And so to you, editing a paper or finishing a dissertation or making a plan to be accountable as you're writing your book, all of that might seem obvious or might seem easy, but to this other person, it is the problem that is keeping them awake at night. And they desperately need someone like you to help them. You've never done this before in terms of running a business, but you are an expert in the skills and the knowledge that you're providing in the coaching, in the editing, right? You've done all that before. You just haven't done it in the context of a business. And so you deserve to be paid for that knowledge and skills and labor. Do not price out of fear. Do not price, give them a very low quote because you feel like you're just practicing. No client wants to feel like you're practicing on them. They would rather pay more and get the real service of somebody who is experienced and knows what they're doing than they would feel like they're a guinea pig that's being practiced on. They also probably don't know that you've never had a client before. So be confident in yourself, be confident in your skills, and quote them based on the value that you are providing to them. All right. Step 3, managing the client relationship. Let's say that you've gotten all the materials, all the information you need, you've come up with a quote, you've delivered the quote. Maybe it takes a few days or even a week, maybe even 2 weeks for the person to get back to you. If it's been 2 weeks and you haven't heard anything, you can follow up with them and say, hey, I know things get busy. I just wanted to move this to the top of your inbox and see if you've considered the quote. Are you still interested in editing, coaching, whatever it is that they contacted you for? In a perfect world, they will reply and say, yes, I'd love to hire you. What are our next steps? This is when you thank them, right? You let them know, all right, I'm going to write up a letter of agreement and send it to you. This, I don't call it a contract because technically a contract is a legal document, and I'll explain why in a minute, why I don't think of this as necessarily a legally binding document. So I call it a letter of agreement. And the purpose of this letter is to make sure that you're both on the same page, right? That's all it is. Really, you should have already discussed via email or on the phone or Zoom the details of what's included in the service that you're providing. But this is something that is in writing that makes sure that all of your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed, right? So you let them know, wonderful, thank you. I will send you a letter of agreement that outlines everything we've discussed and my editing or coaching policies. Please let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so what should be included in this letter of agreement or this LOA? At the very least, it should specify the details you've already worked out. The word count of the document. Again, it's okay if it's an estimate. Sometimes people contact you and they know they're going to need an editor, but they're not finished writing yet. And so you can say in the letter of agreement approximately 10,000 words or whatever it is. And then you would just follow up with them when they send you the final draft for editing And you would confirm what the actual word count is and what the actual quote would be. So you can give in the letter an exact or an estimated word count of the document. You would specify the price per word and then the estimated or actual total cost for the editing that you're doing. If you're doing coaching, you would specify the number of coaching sessions and the length of each session. You would specify again the pricing, right? The total package pricing or however you've decided to bill it. If it's an editing project, you want to specify the turnaround time. And so, again, this could be an estimate that you're going to be working on the file the fourth week of November or whatever. It doesn't have to be exact. It's just to make sure, again, that you and the client are both on the same page. The same thing with the coaching. You would specify we're going to be working together during the spring semester of 2026. Finally, you also want to specify the form of payment or their payment options. So I like to be flexible. I like to offer people the option for Venmo or Zelle or to pay by credit card. I use Stripe as a credit card processor. The first two options, Venmo and Zelle, don't come with associated fees. Stripe does charge a small fee for paying with a credit card. In the United States, at least, it is not legal to pass this fee on to your clients. I also think that's kind of a not very nice thing to do, as we all go and pay with our credit card in other places, and businesses don't charge us extra for using it. It's just the cost of doing business. So I know it's not ideal, but getting paid is better than not getting paid or not having a client. So try to be flexible and offer people options so that it makes things easier for them. You also, in the letter of agreement, should set expectations for turnaround and feedback. You need to have a section in the document where you clarify what is expected of the client and what is expected of the editor or coach. So, for example, you would say that the client needs to reply to any questions in a timely fashion. Otherwise, the deadline for project completion might have to be extended. You might also say you assume that the writing is original and be clear about how you're going to handle any text that is plagiarized or AI generated. If you don't want to edit text that falls into either of those categories, you need to specify that up front. And the plagiarism, I think, is pretty obvious, but nowadays you might want to actually talk about this with the client. And if you do have a policy of not editing AI generated text, you should probably tell them up front just so they know whether or not they should work with you. You also want to have a statement in your letter of agreement saying that you cannot guarantee that the document will be approved by the author's committee or accepted for publication. Of course, you are going to improve the text as much as possible, but it is not humanly possible to promise anyone that they are going to graduate or the journal or whatever is going to accept their paper for publication. That seems obvious, but you need to have it in there just to protect yourself. In the section on what the editor will provide, you might mention how you do the editing. So that you use track changes in Microsoft Word, that you leave comments. If you're a coach, this is where you would mention whether or not you're going to provide recordings or transcripts of the Zoom sessions, any other details like that that you think are important. And again, the idea here is to make sure that you and the client are on the same page. I think that offering someone a letter of agreement like this makes you look more professional. It makes you look like an established business, and so it builds trust with them. Sometimes if the person is paying you with institutional funds, like research funds, the institution might require a kind of document like this. And I think it preempts any potential complaints or misunderstandings or other issues that might come up because the client knows going into this relationship that you very clearly addressed these common problems and they can't get one by you, right? By making some kind of complaint or demanding something after the fact that you did not promise to provide in the document. And the reason, as I said earlier, that I don't consider this a contract is because I think that it is very unlikely with any project that you do, whether it's coaching or editing, that you're going to take something like this to court, right? I have never, in my 6 years of doing this, I've never had a situation where somebody complained or wanted their money back or something like that. But if they did, my personal approach, and you have to do whatever you want, but my personal approach would be if somebody was really that dissatisfied, I would just refund their money. And I say that very carefully because I do believe that you deserve to get paid. And I'll talk about this more in a second. But it's not a situation where you are going to take them to court over $500 or even $1,000. I mean, for me, I wouldn't do that. It's up to you. But if you do feel like you ever could potentially be in a situation like that where you would need something that holds up in court, you would want to talk to a lawyer and get legal advice about that because I am not a lawyer. I do not give legal advice. And that's why I call this a letter of agreement because a contract is technically a legally binding document. And I want to be clear that this is not for the purposes of any kind of legal disputes and dealing with that. It is so that you and the client are on the same page and understand each other. Okay, let's go on to step 4. So, presumably, the client will read through the document. They will, if they have questions, they will ask you, you will answer them, they'll sign the text, and they'll be very excited to work with you going forward. The next step is to deliver a great experience. When you are editing a document, you don't want to just correct the commas and, make sure that the text is clear. Sometimes it's also nice to go the extra mile and to educate and to explain. Here, the caveat is, going back to what I said at the beginning of this episode, you want to try to get a sense of what your client's style is. Do they want you to leave helpful comments, or are they the kind of person who's in a hurry and just wants to get it done and over with? Many people, though, I think, appreciate if you make a change and it's not obvious as to why you're making that change, they would appreciate it if you leave a comment that says, hey, when you're combining two independent clauses, you would use a semicolon instead of a colon or something like that, right? Whatever it has to be. You don't have to leave it all the time. If it is an obvious change, you don't have to say anything. And, if you're reading the text and something truly doesn't make sense to you and you don't know how to fix it, just leave a polite comment that says, I'm not sure what this is trying to say. Please clarify. On that note, I would say whenever you do leave comments, be careful of your tone because some authors, understandably, are very sensitive about their writing. Some of them feel insecure or uncomfortable about their writing skills. They feel uncomfortable getting feedback from someone, even a professional editor. And we all know that things can get lost in translation, right? You could say something with the kindest of intentions, and somebody on the other end of the document reads the comment and feels like you're being rude to them. So be very mindful of your tone and the way that you write things in these comments and also in your emails to the author. One suggestion that I have on this is don't use the word you. Don't say, when you write this, it sounds unclear or something like that. You would refer to the text itself. So you might say something like, this sentence was a bit unclear, so I've revised for clarity. Please confirm that the original meaning is preserved, right? So you're making your revisions about the text rather than about the author. I think that this kind of attention to detail and to communication can go a really long way in providing an exceptional experience to the client, which is what has them hire you again and has them refer you out to their friends and colleagues. If you are coaching, I would give the same feedback. You want to be very careful about how you communicate with people in sessions. Now, when I use the term coaching here, I am using it very loosely, right? What I'm really talking about is mentorship or advising of the type that you have always provided to your students and to your colleagues and your postdocs or people in your lab or whatever it is your situation is. Coaching in this business has a more specific meaning, and usually coaching involves, you might think about life coaching. I think is probably where it originated, and now coaching is used more in like academic writing coaching or some dissertation coaching, something like that. But when we talk about coaching, what we're really talking about is somebody who's trained from a coaching school, who has received some kind of professional training in coaching. And that involves asking a lot of questions and exploring people's motivations and their mental blocks and those kinds of things. If you are thinking of building up a true coaching business, whether it's writing coaching, dissertation, public speaking, whatever kind of coaching you want to do, I would recommend getting that kind of professional coaching training. But when you're just starting out, I don't think it's necessary. You don't have to go and spend thousands of dollars on a coaching program before you even have your first client. What we're talking about here is navigating your very first client, dipping your toes in the water, seeing if this is the right fit for you. So do not use, oh, I need a coaching certificate as a reason for you not to start. Okay. And if you are editing in particular and delivering feedback along with your edits, I would say that that's not even really coaching. That is mentorship and advising. And that kind of work and that kind of delivery of feedback is no different than what you've probably been doing for years in your academic role. So you are absolutely well qualified and well suited to deliver that kind of feedback in this new context. So, with that said, I would just say that as you are delivering this feedback on a manuscript, or even, if you're helping a grad student finish their dissertation, be kind, be careful of how you word things, watch your tone, be patient, be empathetic. You know, hopefully you do this in your life anyway an advisor to students. But again, you're not in the same office with this person. You're maybe not face to face. Things can get confused, right? In they don't know you personally the way that your actual students do. So just be mindful of how you communicate with people. And all of that is, again, part of delivering a great experience. The last thing I would say on this is make sure that you deliver the product on time or early. If you are late returning a document to a client, that is going to make things harder for them. Of course, life happens. If it's your first client, hopefully it's not happening at a time where you've got a lot of other stuff going on and you can't keep up the deadline. But just communicate with people. Just tell them if something's going on, your kids are sick, whatever. But try as much as possible to do what you say you were going to do, including delivering the document on time. Step 5, close the project gracefully. Once you have delivered the document or finalized the coaching sessions, you would send an email that maybe you're returning the document to them in this email. Maybe you are giving some kind of wrap up to the coaching relationship. You want to make sure that you are thanking them for working with you. You want to summarize what you did. usually with a copy edit, I don't really do this unless I have some kind of big picture feedback to give, but it would just be a sentence or two. If you're coaching or if you're doing a developmental edit, maybe you have a little bit more feedback to deliver here. And so you could do that as you thank them in the email. You might also repeat the steps that they can take to pay you if they haven't paid you already. And so for me, that would include saying you can make the final payment in the amount of whatever it is to Venmo, and I give my username again for Venmo, Zelle, or I say I can send you a Stripe link if you prefer to pay by credit card. And I also always say, please let me know if you have any questions. When you hear back from them, obviously you want to address any of their concerns and answer any of their questions. If they express gratitude and they're happy with your work, you can ask for a testimonial. This is the best time to ask for a testimonial. I always hear people say, "Oh, I'm going to wait a couple weeks and then follow up and ask then." Don't do that. Ask them right now. If they are happy with your work, right now is the time where they are experiencing peak gratitude, peak relief, and they are most likely to want to reciprocate by giving you a testimonial to use. If they reply to you and they write a couple sentences thanking you, saying, "Oh, this really helped me. I never could have finished my dissertation without you," you can just reply and say, "Thanks so much for the kind feedback. Would it be okay if I use it as a testimonial?" And I usually add in there, I can use this anonymously or I can use your name, whichever you prefer. And it gives them the option to say, yes, I'd prefer it's anonymous, but at least you're still getting that testimonial, right? They might say no if you don't offer that anonymous option. Or if they say, thanks so much, I really appreciate your work, and it's very brief like that, you could reply back and say, hey, thanks for the feedback. Would you mind writing me a brief testimonial to use on my website or in my social media? And you could say, again, it could be anonymous or I could use your name, whatever you prefer. But the point here is you want to ask them for this when they are happiest with the project and where they when they are still focused on the project. They haven't gotten bogged down with grading or other things that are going on 2 weeks from now. So as long as you suspect that they're pleased with your work, definitely ask for a testimonial because you are going to want those as you try to grow your business and bring in more clients. Now, what if the project goes badly? I never hope this is going to happen, but it does. It's reality, right? If for some reason someone is unhappy with your work, always remain professional, be understanding. If you truly have done something wrong, if you've made a mistake, just admit it and fix it, right? Offer to fix it at no extra charge, right? If it truly is your own mistake. Be humble, right? Apologize, admit it, but at the same time, don't offer to cancel their payment or something like that. You don't want to offer to do the whole project for free. That's going too far. You still deserve to be paid for the work that you've done. Just make sure that you're offering to make things right at no extra charge for them. If you feel that their complaints are not justified, stand your ground. Be firm, right? Be polite, but be firm. Say, maybe they're complaining because they thought you were going to do 2 or 3 extra passes on the document after they made additional changes. Be firm and say, as noted in the letter of agreement, every copy edit includes only 1 round of edits on the document. And this is exactly why you have a letter of agreement so that you can refer to it if or when you have any problems like this. Advocate for yourself, right? I had a situation recently where a member of my program had edited a document for a new client, and the client, even though they had talked about all these details, they even had a Zoom session ahead of time, the client was a little bit upset and frustrated because they thought the editor was going to approach the edits in a different way. And the editor contacted me and said, Paulina, what do I do? And I said, just stand firm. And the payment was going to be made through the institution. And so she was a bit concerned that the client was not going to allow that payment to go through. Well, it did. It took a week or two, but the editor finally heard back that, from I think it was the administrative assistant and said, you'll receive the check in a couple weeks or something like that. So, most people, even if they are unhappy with their work, they're not the kind of person that's going to say, well, I'm not going to pay you. I've never had that happen again in 6 years of doing this. I think it's very rare. And so, if you truly believe that you have not done anything wrong, stay calm, be professional, hold your ground, and hope for the best, right? I mean, I can't tell you that you're never going to have a terrible situation, but we just have to do the best we can and be kind and reach out, right? This is why we have communities. This is why we have the Becoming an Academic Editor community, so that you have a place where you can go to our Slack channel and say, hey, this is happening. What do I do? And you can get advice. You can get support from other people who are in the exact same boat as you. So be strong. Don't freak out. Be professional. Be kind. And, if you do make a mistake, don't worry about it. You're human. We all make mistakes. Just be humble, admit it, and do your best and move on. This is your first client. Things will go wrong at some point in your career. So don't worry too much. It's okay. Finally, we have step 6, reflect and document. I always suggest, if whether you are editing or coaching, but especially if you're editing, record your hours. Use a tool like Clockify. It's totally free. You can keep track of every project that you work on, the types of projects, the client, everything, and use it as a little stopwatch and keep track of the time you spend on your projects, even from the very beginning. Then you have a Google Sheet or an Excel spreadsheet where you keep track of each project. You record the amount of time it took you. You record the number of words. You use formulas to keep track of your editing speed, how many words per hour. Then you can calculate your effective hourly rate. What did you earn per hour out of the total price? And any other information that you think might be helpful that you might want to know. And the reason for this is we want to see how quickly are we able to get through these different types of projects. If you're doing developmental editing, you want to track how much time it takes you and the word count so that you have a reference point for what to charge in the future on these new projects. If you're coaching, you might want to have categories for your Zoom sessions and how much time you're spending and what the rate is that you're charging and how much time you're spending outside of Zoom sessions. As an editor, I don't track time I spend doing marketing or emailing with clients or anything like that. I just track the editing time. But if you find that you're having to do a lot of admin work as a coach, where you're, say, downloading or uploading Zoom calls or transcripts or whatever, right? If you're writing up summaries to send to the client to summarize your sessions, you might want to record the amount of time you're spending so that you know what your actual hourly rate is coming out to, given all that extra work that you're doing outside the Zoom sessions themselves. So keep a spreadsheet. You also should note on that spreadsheet if you've invoiced the client and if they've paid you. And so as you have more and more projects coming in, you're going to lose track of whether or not that check has shown up in the mail, especially if it's like an institutional payment, right? Some of them will mail you a check. And so you want to note in the spreadsheet that you've invoiced them. And then you can go back in a couple weeks and see, did that actually come through? Did I get paid? And you can follow up if you need to. I would also suggest that you keep a folder with screenshots of testimonials so that you can use them in your marketing. You can put them on your website or post them on social media. And then finally, a few months after you have finished your project with this client, you might want to follow up and ask them, hey, how are you doing? How did whatever happened with that article? Have you heard back from the journal? How did your dissertation defense go? Right? Whatever it is, just follow up and check in. And you don't have to outright ask them, do you have any more work for me? You probably don't want to do that. But it sort of is a subtle way to put yourself back at the top of their mind to remind them, hey, I'm here if you need me. So it's a nice touch, I think, to follow up and ask how they're doing. And it also reminds them that you exist. And if they have any other projects, they can send you it. All right. That was a lot of information. Hopefully, it was helpful. Hopefully, you could go back whenever you do get your first inquiry from a potential client and follow those steps. As always, reach out to me if you have any questions. If you are wanting to get more support, everything that I've covered in this conversation today is what I teach in our program, Becoming an Academic Editor. We have over 80 academics who have enrolled to this point. They are starting academic editing and coaching businesses. Many of them are extremely successful. They come out of the 12-week cohort, and within 2 or 3 months, they are fully booked. Others are taking it slowly. They're doing this as a side hustle while they are wrapping up their time in academia. They're doing it as a side hustle just to test the waters and see if they like it and see where it takes them. Many of them do it because they've got tenure in academia and they're tired of the administrative stuff and the post-COVID, stresses and all of the stuff that faculty are having to deal with. And they found that starting a business as a side hustle is exciting for them and it's bringing them back to their creativity and they're really loving it. And so there are many, many options out there for you. If you are curious and you're thinking about potentially starting a business, but you don't know where you might take it, go to acadiaediting.com/map. And I have a free workbook called Map Your Academic Business, and that will walk you through all of the most important questions you need to answer to design your niche and to design those first steps of your business. So who do you want to serve? How do you want to help them? What problems do you want to help them solve? All that kind of stuff. It's a really great thought exercise. So that's acadiaediting.com/map. If you are more certain that you want to become an editor or an academic coach, go to acadiaediting.com/become an editor. And that will have you join my email list and it will give you some more information about my program, BAE. And you can enroll. As soon as you enroll, you get immediate access to the course and all of the materials, including templates for a letter of agreement, invoices, emails to send to clients, how to explain what's included in a copy edit or a coaching agreement, all the stuff you need to do what we've talked about today, but without the stress and without doing it alone. And then you would join our next 12-week cohort. As I'm filming this, the next cohort starts in January 2026 and then another one in March. And so you get immediate access to the materials and then you join the next cohort. And you also get lifetime access to our Slack channel where you can post questions and get support, everything you need to help you do this without having to do it alone. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember that you are smart, you have a lot of knowledge and skills, you provide a lot of value to the people that you work with, and you deserve to get paid for it. I'll see you next time.
If you're unhappy in academia and you think you might be a good editor or writing coach, check out my course, Becoming an Academic Editor. This digital course is paired with a 12-week group coaching program to support you through your decision to leave academia or not, and to start building a profitable and rewarding academic editing business. Learn more by going to acadiaediting.com/become an editor. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time.